Welcome back to Animals, Nature, and You. This is part 2 to my interview with Jack Baker. So if you haven't listened or watched part 1 yet, please go back and do that first. We wrap up part 1 with Jack sharing with us, if you will, not really explaining, but sharing with us how he was first exposed to pangolins, not penguins, pangolins, also known as scaly anteaters, and how he first learned about them. And then when he learned about them, how important he felt their story was that he started his own podcast. He goes into other parts of his life as well in this second part, and it's really exciting to get down and talk to him more about this. So again, we wrapped up part 1 with him sort of halfway through that explanation. I'm going to go back a little bit, start that explanation back up to bring us into the starting point of part 2. So with that, here's Jack sharing with us that information.
And so I learned about this animal, and that fascinated me. I was like, okay, there's maybe a story there because no one knows about this. And what makes their story so important, and I think what the element where I was like, this is what needs to be done and this is what I want to do, is they then, I then kind of learned about all of the threats that they face, right? And so, as I said, this was going on during the pandemic. And for those of you who maybe don't remember, at that time, there was a lot of talk about pangolins maybe being involved in the creation of coronavirus. Like they were sat somewhere doing something. Like they were involved in somewhere along the line of maybe a pangolin is responsible. And alongside that, they have these other conservation narratives of like, they're the most trafficked mammal in the world. No one knows what they are, right? Millions of them every year trafficked. Yeah. No one knows what they are, right? They face the threats of climate change, of habitat loss, of habitat fragmentation. And like their story with habitat fragmentation is especially, I think, powerful and the one that people resonate a lot with, because what happens is if you put an electric fence up, to kind of stop a pangolin from, or to stop maybe a larger mammal moving through different areas in the ranges where they're found, where something like an elephant will, or a gazelle or whatever it is, zebra, whatever it is, hits an electric fence, bounces because it's a little zap for a large mammal. A pangolin, when they hit an electric fence, usually on the lower wire, what will happen is they get scared, and instead of bouncing, they wrap round the electric fence.
Yeah.
And they will kill themselves because they will then keep getting that little zap and they will pass away. So they have this incredibly powerful emotional story that nobody seemed to know. And so,
and just so anybody who doesn't know, so they understand, I'll explain real quick. The fear, so you're saying something gets zapped, it jumps away. So our response, something pokes us, stabs us, whatever, like most mammals, the response is to jump away from that stimulus.
Yeah.
The pangolin's response when poked, stabbed, jabbed anywhere on its body is to curl up into a tight ball because they're covered in those scaly keratin scales. It's a shield. It protects them theoretically, but because the way the cable or the wire is along the lower level, they've started to cross over it. As they ball up, their instinct, unfortunately, puts them in this really bad predicament that they don't have the natural ability to problem solve. Oh, if I unwrap, because unwrapping means you're going to die. So to them, it's just a constant, something's trying to get to me, so I'm going to wrap up tighter and tighter. Yeah. And hence in this challenge that they face with these electric fences, which is just horrific.
Yes, it's awful. And I think that's, all of these stories and pieces of this story, right, feed together to make it into this like tale that is, all animal stories I think are worth telling.
Absolutely.
But this one, I was like, I can't believe it hasn't been told more. And especially because it requires such nuance of like, there are so many perspectives involved in the conservation of pangolins. A lot of the assumptions around that narrative are very racist, very problematic assumptions from people who sit in positions of power and privilege. And it's a very interesting, tricky, nuanced space to enter and pull apart. And so I set about creating this 6-episode podcast series where I interviewed guests from all around the world about pangolins, about their experiences teaching, interacting, conserving, all sorts of different aspects, talking about their experience, right? And I submitted it and that was meant to be it. I made up the little cover art. I wrote up the little episode descriptions. I sent it away to my supervisor who went, "You've done far too much." And I said, I was locked in my house all year. I can't.
Nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do. Of course, all I did was do this and play a horrifying amount of Nintendo Switch. So that's all I've done. And so and I submitted it, and that was that. And then a few months rolled by, and I was like, like that still sat there, like, and I think it's quite good. So maybe just post it. Like, I worked out basically how to post something on Spotify, which was all free at the time, and it still is. And I was like, okay, I'll post it, and then if people listen, that's lovely and that's good. And then yeah, people listened, and then more people listened, and then some more people listened, and then this kind of story grew and grew and grew. And like the people listening and subscribing grew and grew and grew. And I decided, well, now that we have this momentum going, what I would like to do is kind of use this as a platform to talk about all kinds of underappreciated, misunderstood creatures. So what started with this one misunderstood, nuanced, incredibly complicated, wonderful creature and story grew into a celebration of all of those stories, which I feel like across the conservation space, which I feel like need more attention and need more love. And so we've gone on to look at like weird, wonderful animals. So things like tapirs or hornbills or strange amphibians and reptiles and under the sea creatures, all kinds of weird stuff. We've looked at stories that people think they know, but maybe they don't. So I had people from the Giraffe Conservation Foundation on to talk about how a giraffe, right? People think, oh, giraffes, everyone loves giraffes, they must be fine. But actually that's a far more deep and nuanced story than people assume. And there's so many layers to that of them undergoing a silent extinction, and then the reclassification of how many different types of giraffes are there, and all these different things. A very complicated story. So reframing what people think they already know, or talking to people about different interesting ways of doing conservation, or from different backgrounds who maybe haven't had the chance to have their voice heard in the conservation space. So that might be interesting ways of doing conservation. So using music or art or literature, or every year I run Pangolin Pride, where we talk to members of the LGBTQIA+ community about their experiences in the conservation space. So there are so many different things it covers now, and it's grown arms and legs, and I get to go and do workshops with people about podcasting and communications, and I now have taken on some occasions a kind of producer role, which feels very fancy and official, and I like saying because it makes me sound like I know what I'm doing. And yeah, so it's all sorts of things. But that's kind of the chapter 2 of, we had pre-Hamish, and now we've got post-Hamish of the podcast. So yeah, that's how it all came to be, and how we ended up now, shockingly 5 years down the line, with over 100 and something episodes of the show. So yeah,
it's brilliant. I love it. And with all of that, then, that you, and this is a great organic story, the intended purpose, then it was like, but wait a minute, there could be more. And now all of a sudden, you're 5 years in, with all the different people you've had the opportunity to talk with on your podcast. Has there been one or two, or any particular story or thing where you're like, oh, wow, like it was sort of an aha moment for you, or a strong takeaway that you're like, wow, I'm really glad I had that conversation? I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of rich and robust conversations, but is there any particular ones that was just like, oh, I didn't expect that?
Okay. So I guess, like, in terms of like talking to your heroes and people you really admire, there's been a couple moments where I've gotten to sit down with people who, like, the nerd in me is like, I love this person so much, and I don't want to overly nerd out. There's a couple of those, so one of my favorite animals aside from the pangolin is the tapir. So getting to sit down with Patricia Medici, who does a lot of conservation work around pangolin. She has a fabulous TED Talk around tapirs. She has a fabulous TED Talk all about her work. I'd kind of seen and then went, oh, she actually, like, I was set up through another guest that I'd had on the show. Like, they put us in touch, and then I was able to speak to her, and that was wonderful. Seeing very early on, one of the big realizations that I had was speaking to Arnaud Debier from from ICAS, the Giant Armadillo Conservation Project, and who they run also the Anteaters and Highways Project. Talking to him about, and having him on like the first episode of the podcast post Pangolin, speaking about like the importance of everyone in conservation, not just scientists, was very important to me. Really, really important and foundational in my learning, because it was like him having that justification from someone who is so established in the conservation community, does such incredible work to protect some of the most wonderfully charismatic, bizarre creatures on Earth. Sit there and go like, we can't do it all as scientists. We need communicators, we need artists, we need storytellers, we need all these people to help us tell these stories. That was incredibly validating. And then I think kind of more recently, another person who I would add into that mix of not just changing not just a wonderful conversation, but changing the way I view conservation, was I recently had CJ Greco on the show, who I met at a conference last year, the NAAE conference, North American Association for Environmental Education conference, in Pittsburgh, and talking to them, they do so much work to open up conservation spaces to communities who haven't had a chance to be in them, and the thing that they told me was like, joy is an act of resistance, and having that and sitting with that, I think especially right now in a world that tries to push joy away a lot of the time, or make stories feel bad all of the time, and make things feel overwhelming and like this monolith we can't conquer, having somebody sit down who is now a friend but also someone I admire very deeply say these things about like joy being an act of resistance, and if you can hold on to that, you're already making a difference. I think was so powerful, so powerful, and it pairs so nicely with other experiences I've had with my supervisor back at uni, who kind of always told me to look after my own joy, and having that kind of backwards forwards nostalgic moment of learning when I paired these all of these things together. It's there's a lot there, and a lot of I feel very lucky to have had the conversations I've had, and feel very grateful to have met the people I've met, because they've all been phenomenal. Like I genuinely have not had a single guest who I haven't learned something from, whether it be about an animal or something that's changed the trajectory of my life.
That's so cool. I love that. And in that answer you just gave, you were talking about the importance of being able to bring information or connection to nature and natural spaces, perhaps to those who don't have it readily available. And that got me thinking too, back to what you'd mentioned before about pangolin pride, and you had started that. Can you talk more about that as well, as far as that? Is that part of the podcast? Is that something kind of separate? And what have you found in starting that, the value? What has that reflected back to you in that level of work of inclusion, essentially?
Yeah, so it was something that I wanted to do from the very beginning of the podcast, I think, was this kind of create spaces for stories that people didn't know or didn't have the opportunity to tell, or these things. And something that I always wanted to do was run a series for Pride Month. And it took a few years to kind of work out how that would work. And so every June now, we have, I think I always overcommit because I look for guests and then find so many amazing people that I'm like, okay, I think there's about 14 episodes from the last 2 years where we did, had conservationists on from all over the world. And yeah, the point of the series was essentially to create the LGBTQIA plus heroes in the conservation space that we don't see and we don't grow up seeing, right? And give them a platform to tell their stories in the way that matters to them. And also tell them in a way where it's not just, I think so often when those stories are told, the questioning often becomes, tell me about how sad and how awful your experience was. And like, that's like there is value in sharing those stories, but that's not, someone's entire experience should never be defined by the bad things, right? Their experience is so like a kaleidoscope of collective experience. It's such a big and colorful and beautiful thing where there is good and there is bad and there is sad and there is anger and there is joy and frustration and love and light and all of these things mixed together. And so what the point of the series was to kind of go, well, yeah, maybe we can reflect on those lessons, but also let's talk about the amazing work that you've done and show that, like, yeah, like LGBTQIA plus people exist within the conservation space. They have deeply affected the conservation space, whether it be through veterinary medicine or academic work or education or communications or whatever aspect it is. They, like, queer people are there and are making a huge difference. And anybody else who thought previously there wasn't a hero for them, here they are. And like, look at them and be in awe of them as much as I am, because they are phenomenal and fantastic and wonderful souls. And so, yeah. And so every year we've done that series, and we've now had about 13, 14 episodes, I think, of Pangolin Pride. And the response has been overwhelmingly beautiful and
Good.
wonderful. And in creating those spaces, you do feel a bit of responsibility because posting things online that can be, you have this fear that they might be clumped onto by people who are hateful and nasty and sit behind these kind of like
Sure.
screens and go type all these horrible things. You worry about that, and you worry about the response and how can I care for these people and how can I make sure that I am not being irresponsible in what I'm doing and making sure I'm creating a safe space and all of these things. But the messages that I've received, both from the people who've been allowed to tell their stories for the first time, maybe, and also the people who've heard those stories for the first time, and I don't feel confident necessarily sharing those things because a lot of them have been deeply personal. But some of the messages that I've received about, like, I listened to CJ or like Christine Wilkinson, or I listened to Andres talk about sloths, and I never thought I could be a vet, but now I can. Like, all of these things like that, it's just been so beautiful and wonderful. And I think now for the rest of my life, I'm committed to doing at least a couple episodes for Pride Month, because they're the ones that, like, of all the stories have been, resonated with the most, I think. And it's been so powerful to watch. So yeah, I'm really, really proud of that. And like, it takes a lot for me to say, I don't know if it's a conservationist mindset or a me mindset. It takes a lot for me to say I'm really proud of that, but I'm really, really proud of that work and what it's done, and the guests who've given me their time and their stories. I'm so happy. And yeah, that's one of the things that is certainly has been bringing me a lot of joy recently. Yeah.
Well, you should be proud of it. I know it's so important especially for younger kids, to be able to see a path forward through someone who gives representation. And I'm sitting here as a white male in the U.S. I have very few barriers to do whatever I want. And I've recognized that. And I've worked with enough people, though, that are not like me, that are not male, that are not white in the U.S., to recognize that and hear their stories of how important it was when they happened to see someone who looked like them or represented how they are, whoever they may be, and go, wow, if they can do that, then I can do that. And that it wasn't until they saw that representation ahead of them in line going, oh, I can do this. A lot of people forged forward without any representation and did it, but there's so much value in that. So yeah, you should be proud of that. Giving a voice to that space and the inclusion in our world of wildlife education and environmental education and conservation and wildlife care and veterinarians and all of that. So yeah, hats off to you for not only starting that, but then sticking with it and moving forward. And even in some of the areas where it can be scary because someone can hide behind the screen and say some horrible stuff. So I think that's really, really awesome. And goodness, I mean, yeah, you opened up this conversation with, you do so much and you only hang upside down for 15 minutes. I can see that as a fact now. You're doing so much, and I appreciate you tremendously. I do want to ask though. Well, let me ask this question first. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure the audience of Animals, Nature, and You gets to hear from you? Not that I wouldn't invite you back, by the way, if something comes up, but is there anything that we have left unsaid that you would like to share?
I think I would like to share, and I think I would like to share it especially now, because I think I said it during the Instagram Live with very little kind of context, because we were tight for time, and I think
we were, yes.
Like, what I would like to now knowing and having listened to an hour of where my journey came from and why I'm doing what I'm doing and all of those things, I think that the thing that I want to highlight and just take a moment to sit with is, I paint this sometimes picture, and I think a lot of us paint this picture in conservation of everything being wonderful and it being like straightforward and like brilliant, yay, achievement, look how great I am. No. There are moments of self-doubt. There are moments of me doing awful things where I fall flat on my face. All of those things happen. And there are moments where barriers come up. And I remember one that I always like to share is, like, I remember when I was first producing the podcast, I got up on stage to do a presentation. It was part of uni. I had to do alongside the podcast. I had to do other courses, and I was tasked with doing a presentation in front of my group. And I got up there, and it was about puffins, which makes the story even more ridiculous because it's just a silly seabird that I love. But I got up there and I delivered this presentation, and I remember like once that was done, the person who was marking all of that it was on Zoom, but virtually in my head, standing up and being like, like you're like people like you just don't fit, do they? Or people like you don't really do these things. And I knew exactly what they meant by that, and it was not nice. And I remember then they took pot shots at the town that I'm from, and they did all these things that were like in front of an audience, deeply humiliating. And as the kid who grew up kind of like wanting to be in conservation, wanting to do all these things, having built this kind of moment and this confidence, having been on a path that was different and coming across and never seeing myself in that space and all of these things, to have that moment in front of a class of people you respect was like shattering. And I was like, okay, what? Why? What? And then they gave me a really bad grade, and they gave me all these things, and they basically said, you're not going to make it. Sorry, this isn't for you. You're too loud, you're too opinionated, you're childish, you're this, you're that, you're the next thing.
Right.
And I was like, okay, cool. And then a few weeks went by, and I wasn't working on my podcast. I'd kind of given up on it because I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm clearly not good at this. This is going to be embarrassing, and it's going to be bad. And my supervisor, and I kind of touched on this advice a second ago, but she pulled me to one side and she was like, listen, something's gone wrong. What's going on? What's happened? And I explained the whole thing about like, oh, I'm childish and I don't belong and I don't do this and I don't do that. And she went, oh, okay, well, that's a load of rubbish. That's nothing. And what was it you said about childishness? And I was like, oh, you said that I was childish and this is ridiculous and people won't take me seriously. And then she went, well, Jack, no, that childishness, in quotes, that over enthusiasm is what makes you special and what makes you different. After working in conservation, you are going to be faced with stories that are hard and difficult and bad and complicated, and the news is going to be all of these different things, and it's going to be tricky sometimes. And so often conservationists and environmental educators and all of these people lose that joy, and they forget where they came from, and they forget why they love it, and they forget what they're doing, and they push the childishness away. But if you can hold on to that and hold on to that joy and protect it, then that is what will be like a superpower that will keep you going. If you can keep that flame burning, it will keep the engine moving. That will keep you making a difference. And since then, I kind of went on to finish the podcast. I did all these things. I protected that flame of childishness and joy. And it's what got me to be able to speak to you, to be able to speak at events all over the world, to get to run workshops, to run a podcast that's gone for 5 years, to work with organizations like the zoo and with the Botanic Gardens that I had admired since I was a little kid, meet some of my best friends in the entire world, do all of these things, is protecting that joy and protecting that little thing that reminds me of why I'm doing this in the first place. And so the thing that I always share when I am given the opportunity to is, please, 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 no matter what opinionated, nasty, awful stories, whatever it is that comes at you, please remember to protect that little ball of joy, because if you can do that, then you will keep going and you will be able to do everything. So yeah, that's the one story that I always like to throw in there as like a please remember this, because that's the most important message, I think.
Yeah, and that answers the question I was going to ask, which is, what's the one thing you want people to really know? And I know from our discussion on Instagram Live, I kind of asked that same type of like, is there any one big takeaway you want people to have? And it was in the same theme here of what you're mentioning, of protecting your joy. And I want to piggyback on that, if you don't mind, in the sense that protecting your joy sometimes also looks like taking a break, but not quitting. And so often I think in the realm of conservation and wildlife care, it is tough. We're emotionally invested when we do this work. It's a work of passion. So the setbacks are that much more impactful, I think, on us emotionally and mentally, and can influence protecting that joy versus to the point of like, well, I have to protect my joy enough. I need to remove myself from this.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no harm, anybody listening, there is no harm in taking a break. And sometimes taking a break, you think, well, my break ends in 15 minutes. My break ends in, I have summer break, and you have a restart date already known. Sometimes in the essence of, and Jack, you chime in if you think there's more to this, but in the essence of sometimes protecting your joy, you take a break that doesn't have a date attached to when you come back from that break yet. It's when that joy is safe and sound and you're stabilized again around that you come back from that break, not an actual date. And for some people, I think that can feel like quitting because I don't know if and when I'll come back. But I've always kind of stuck to that. Something I came across years and years ago is that taking a break, taking a rest is not quitting. It's only quitting if you don't come back to it. And sometimes it might take a couple of months. It might take a couple of years. But there's value in recognizing that and picking back onto what you said then is that's so important to protect that joy. And if someone says you're childish around it or too goofy or too silly or, if that's who you are though, and that's where that spark comes from to get this kind of work done and going forward and committed to other people, then absolutely need to protect it. And don't be afraid to take a break if it gets a little heavy sometimes because it's tough. Environmental education and what happens in the world, it can be tough and hard, but it is, if it's where your heart is, it's worth fighting for, worth protecting. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that I can reflect on and recognize so deeply of like, if it all gets too much, like I always like to think of it as like in conservation, maybe we want to go about things in different ways. Maybe we want slightly different ends, but all of us care deeply and we are all on the same team at the end of the day.
We're all on the same planet.
And if you need to take a break, right? Like this is a team sport. If you need to take a break and tap out for a bit, like you can, and it will be fine, right? And even like at the start of the year, at the start of 2025, I took 2 months off my PhD because I was like, I've been doing this for 2 and a bit years now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm burned out. I can't do this. I can't do that. I need to just stop. And I took 2 months and disappeared and was like, I will come back to you when I'm ready to come back to you. And you know what happened? Everything waited and everything was fine.
Everything was there.
And everything was still there and everything was okay. And I understand that I say that from a position of being like very lucky and in a position of like privilege where I am able to be like, I can take 2 months off. I have managed to save up money. I have a family that is supportive of that. I have these things. So I am very aware that that's not an option for everyone. And that's like a very different ballgame when it becomes that discussion. But if you can, and if you're in a position that you're like, there is somewhere I can go, there are people who can look after me, there's savings that I have, whatever it is, if you need to take a step back, that's okay. If you need to go and work another job for a while because you just can't do conservation for a bit, that's okay, because you can take it into that space or you can bring it back. When you come back, you can bring back knowledge. You can do all of these things to just look after yourself and prioritize yourself, because at the end of the day, like this great mission that we're on and this big healthy world and happy world that we're aspiring to, it will be far more worth it if we all get there not burnt out and zombies that just want to collapse immediately, right? You will do a better job if you are well rested. You will do a better job if you are more inspired. You will do a better job if you have taken a breath and come up for air and just taken a space to go away and breathe and look after yourself. And I think, eco-anxiety, and there's always all sorts of things that play into this for me and for everyone else, I think, out there, but they're very real. And I think something to bear in mind as well is that we sit here on a podcast and we talk about things and we talk about all these big ideas and this stuff, but I know you probably will also have this, but as a host of a podcast, so many people come up and they're like, "Oh, I love this thing, and I love this thing that you do, and this is amazing. You do all this stuff, and you I could," and I'm like, I'm always just like, at the end of the day, I do all those things and I love them, and I'm just like, I am also burnt out. I also feel the same stress that you do. I also feel the eco-anxiety. I also feel the guilt. I also feel the stress and the sadness. I also feel all of those things. So if you're looking at like the David Attenboroughs and the Steve Backshalls or the Jane Goodalls or the people who inspire you, right? they all have those same feelings of stress and all those things. So don't feel like you need to burn yourself out to be your hero, because all of them feel those things and will take care of themselves. Sometimes, like I don't take care of myself well enough sometimes, but we like, I need to get better of it. But I don't know, like, something I think worth reflecting on is like those things are very real and we all feel them. So don't feel like you have to burn yourself out because you think other people don't. We all need to take the break and we all need to look after ourselves more.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Absolutely love it. Jack, what a great conversation.
Thank you.
I mean, I feel like I don't want to end it, but I know we should. I think we've kind of run the gamut of everything here. And but seriously, I appreciate you so much and your transparency in that. I think it would be very easy for some people to just say, oh, I do all these things. This is what I do. Thank you very much. Follow me here and subscribe to my podcast. But the transparency of how your path has gone, the need to step back from your studies for a little bit to recognize the importance of taking care of yourself. Also, the other side of it too, recognizing it's not just about the animals and the environmental education, but the inclusivity and taking the time to bring other people into your sphere of what you do to help increase that platform for them as well. And the work that they do is really, really awesome. I appreciate you so much, not just for coming on the podcast, but I just appreciate your work and your heart and your desire to do what you do. Our world of conservation and staying connected to nature is a topsy-turvy world, and people like yourself really make it that much better. So thank you, Jack. I appreciate you being here on the podcast and appreciate your work.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always something that, like, as someone who's used to interviewing other people, it's always strange to be the one who's sat with the microphone in front of me being like, oh, yes, I have stories now too. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll talk. But no, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure to go, okay, this is, because I think that's the thing with me is that if you want to speak to me, reach out on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever, because I will talk about my experience and I will talk about whatever questions people have or whatever it is. Because I think just by being open and honest about all those things, good, bad, scary, unmotivating, dismotivating, it's too many words. See the dyslexics coming out again. All of these things, like whatever it is, whether it's motivated you or put a barrier up or whatever it is, like, I think they're all worth talking about, and it's worth having these discussions and telling these stories, and having the opportunity to tell mine a little bit has been exceptionally fun and nice to sit and reflect. So thank you so much for having me as well. And good luck with the brand new podcast. Like, it's so exciting to see more and more of them springing up and more stories. I will be tuning into every single episode going forward, probably, because I can't wait to see who else you've got on.
No, I appreciate it. And now that you mentioned it again, we might have to do like a special episode about succeeding with dyslexia, because I too am dyslexic and understand exactly, the growing up with it, you just have so much self-doubt, and yet here you are doing what you're doing. Here I am doing what I'm doing. And I'm thinking about the kids that are dyslexic in today's world. There's a lot more tools for them than we had, but still, either way, maybe we'll do a short episode about that as well.
And I think more important than ever, because I think there was a recent news article came out in Scotland that was 40-something% of school students in Scotland now require additional support in schools. Yeah. And it's like, just normalizing that as a thing is like, we all are like that. We all have these things. Like, it's such an important thing. And I'm gonna stop my thought there though, because I think otherwise we are going to talk for another hour. I was about to jump in and go, well, I'd be willing to bet that the 40% have always been there. They just figured out how to measure it finally. The neurodivergency and learning challenges, I think they're a much vaster and broader spectrum than anyone has ever given acknowledgement to. But now we do have the ability to understand it better. We're seeing more and more of it. So and it's great that they're now coming up with a way to measure it and give tools to it then too. But again, that's another episode. Goodness gracious, we can go on forever. Okay, Jack. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, thank you so much. In the show notes, I will have all the places people can find you. You said Instagram, LinkedIn, you've got your podcast. Anywhere else we can briefly mention that you'd want people to find you? Yeah, so I'm at The Only Jack Baker on Instagram or at Pangolin Podcast on all social medias. So go and look them up. I'm there. I'm on LinkedIn, which is just my name, Jack Baker. I'm all over the place doing various things. If you search for Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast on any streaming service, it should come up wherever you are. And just because we've talked about them a lot today, if you're in Edinburgh and you're lucky enough to visit Scotland, because it's the best country in the world, I am sure of it. If you're ever lucky enough to be here, please come and visit me either at the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, or at Edinburgh Zoo, or at the Highland Wildlife Park. The work that goes on there with the teams that I am lucky enough to work with are phenomenal, and it's phenomenal, and they're just, everyone there is brilliant and beautiful and wonderful, and the species and the care and the knowledge and the education and everything. So yeah, if you're ever in the area, do go and visit all of those amazing organisations, because I would not be who I am without them, and it's an honour now to be able to work with them as well. So that's what I would also say.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thanks again, Jack. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And of course, thank you, dear listener. I appreciate you hanging out with Jack and I across these two parts. I do want to mention that, when it comes to these longer interviews, I want to be respectful of you, the audience, not necessarily having an hour and a half to listen to one entire interview, but by breaking it up into two parts makes it easier for you to listen to each part, if you will. So I hope you're enjoying it. And it's fun for me, too, to work on my edits and do things a little differently. And I think it also offers the opportunity to go back and reflect on certain parts a little bit easier than having one giant episode. So let me know if you have any thoughts or input on that. That being said, though, I do want to wrap this up. I can't say enough thank you to Jack. Great guy. It's so fun to me that we are from different generations, from different countries, but both growing up with dyslexia and having dyslexia, because you never really grow out of it, finding our place with animals and with wildlife education, environmental education. It's cool to compare notes with them. It's this kindred spirit feel for me that it's just different. It's just different. So I appreciate him. If you haven't, by the way, go listen to his podcast. All the links are down below, as always. You can find his information and my information there. And, of course, subscribe. If you aren't already subscribed to this podcast, Animals, Nature, and You, please do so. If you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button easy enough, or follow, depending upon where you listen to the podcast. So many more great interviews coming every Thursday, new interviews every Tuesday, 10-minute Tuesdays with some updates and fun facts. And that's going to be it. I want to wrap this up because I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good one, everybody.